What a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate that. Hi, everyone. How you doing out there? Okay, I'm going to warn you right now. I have some slides that are eye tests, so if you really want to see them, you're going to have to come up here. And then I can also see you raise your hands when you have questions. Is that going to work? So I'm going to take the next 25, 30 minutes to talk to you about customer advocate marketing and why, let's put that up there, huh? Yeah, and why advocates can be your source of authentic content that delivers really big impact to your marketing, to your company in general. If you think about it, so there's three questions really that we need to answer here, but if you think about it, customer case studies, testimonials, logos, referrals, references, this has been the lifeblood of B2B marketing and sales like forever. And the only thing that's really changing here is a couple of things. One is that your customers now have more ways of talking about you. Some of that's positive, some of that's negative. And that your ability to scale that through technology is now easier. But if you think about it, the things that you want to be able to get out of this is understand, well, why is this important now? What should you be doing differently? And then I have 4 things for all of you to consider to make your advocate marketing really stand out. Because I've been doing B2B marketing for, 20 years as a practitioner and 10 as an analyst. And I have to say that this is, by far, the one thing that really excites me a lot about the potential of B2B marketing. And for all of you, that are here listening about lead management and about content marketing and data management, yeah, you need to do all of that stuff. But if there were one thing that you would ask me, like put my feet to the fire and say, what should we be doing this year? Advocate marketing. So I hope I'm not starting with too much of a non sequitur here, but when I show you this, what do you think of? Come on, word association. Quick, shout it out. Donations. Halloween. Say again. Uh-huh. Thrift store, right? I think I heard that too. This is what we associate with Goodwill Industries, right? It's all about sort of the store experience. Either we have it from a donation side or Halloween costumes are, all of this are things that we think about. But how many of you know that what Goodwill Industries is really about is helping people who need help in transitioning to careers, particularly veterans, people that may have been in the criminal justice system, people that are disadvantaged in some way. In fact, I like to say that this is a front to a bigger business, where Goodwill has helped over 26 million people last year improve their lives through on-the-job training, through English language support, through babysitting, and the money from the stores is what supports that. And what I love about Goodwill is that their slogan is, we give them a hand up, not a handout. And when you think about Goodwill and your customer Goodwill, you need to think about tapping into that Goodwill in the same spirit. How do you give your customers a hand up, not a handout? Because we all know that this is really important in business-to-business marketing, being able to have validation for your claims that what you do is what you do. But what's more exciting and more important is literally having customers who sing your praise and sing it to a broader audience than you can reach. And that's why advocate marketing is really important. Okay, so for those of you who kind of came in a little bit late, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about why advocate marketing is important in what we call the age of the customer. This is something Forrester's been talking about for a few years. How does advocate marketing produce this kind of authentic content that buyers love and that as marketers we love to share? And finally, so most of this I want to spend on the 4 things that you can do to make content marketing, to make advocate marketing successful at your companies. All right, so no surprise, I think everybody's been talking about this today. If you've listened to Carlos Hidalgo talk, if you've talked to a lot of the presentations that have been going on, I think Teresa Kushner even talked about this, buyer behavior has changed. And if you think this is only a B2C phenomenon, you'd be wrong. In fact, Forrester did some research back last year with internet retailer. And what we found in that study, we asked over 200 and something business-to-business buyers, a lot of different questions about their buying habits. And when it comes to the digital world, B2B buyers are totally there. 74% said that they go online for business purchasing, right? Not just personal stuff, business purchasing. And of that same set of people, over half, 53%, said that they prefer going online than talking to a salesperson. Ouch, that kind of, that's an issue. That kind of concerns me. But this is a trend that we've seen for a while. In fact, in 2011, Forrester started tracking something that we call the age of the customer. And it's in 2010, we believe that we entered a new era where competitive advantage is going to come from a very simple idea, namely how well you know and can use that knowledge to serve and delight your customers. That being able to compete in a differentiated way, all the other sort of barriers to competition are being slowly wheedled away by technology and cloud and porous business models, so that the one thing that's left is how well you create relationships with your customers. Now, that can be a double-edged sword. These are all examples, right? You guys seen these examples. I mean, one of the original ones is the flaming, remember the flaming battery in the Dell computer? The guitar guy who got mad at United for breaking his guitar. The famous Comcast service guy sleeping on the sofa. There's a couple of newer ones here. One is DiGiorno Pizza used the hashtag #WhyIStayed, not realizing that that was a very popular hashtag for talking about battered women's issues. A big boo. And then the other one is the Bic for her, pens designed specifically for her. If you want to see some of the cutest, snarkiest product reviews on Amazon, you've got to go look at these pens. It's just hilarious. But this is all the example of what we call digital disruption, right? The power that buyers have to talk about your brand and talk about it in an authentic way, often in ways you don't really appreciate them talking about if you've done something, well, rather dumb like these folks. But on the other hand, there's also this kind of customer, right? And we don't have to be Apple in order to have this kind of association with our products. Look at these people. Look at the smiles on their faces. They are just fanatical about these tablets. That's the kind of energy that we want to tap into. The same energy that lets your customers go online to complain about you can be magnified when they go online to talk about you in a positive way. So at Forrester, we refer to this as advocate marketing. It's the use of marketing strategy, budget, and resources, what all of us do, to encourage our customers, but it could also be our employees or our business partners, to do something on our behalf, with or without the expectation of a commercial return, of something mutual benefit. Now, this has been the interesting transition in advocate marketing, in that purists think, well, to be an advocate, they have to just advocate for you. They can't expect any sort of return. And that's starting to soften now and starting to say, you know, as long as we're having an authentic conversation, it is important to understand that, you know, people are talking about you because, you know, there's something in it for both of us. From a marketing standpoint, I think this is one of the most important things that marketers can focus on. This benefits you by having advocates, not because it's good for your company, which it is, not because it's the right thing to do, which it is, not because it expresses their loyalty, which it is, but as a marketer, you're kind of been stuck in this kind of model where you're always looking at how do we put programs together, how do we put campaigns together to put money in the top of the funnel to get somebody to come out of the bottom, you know, and hopefully stay loyal. Where really the customer experience has changed, right? It's now a life cycle. Customers that we have early in our lifetime can become customers later. In fact, they can move and follow us from different organizations. So at Forrester, we talk about the customer life cycle as starting with the discover phase, where people discover they have a problem. Then they proceed to explore options, make decisions, and then ultimately buy. In business-to-business marketing, this is, it's not half of the process, so that's like 20% of the process. The other 80% involves the next 3 steps, which is beginning to use and getting up to speed the right way, starting to find out, are there other alternatives? Are there different things we can do? Can I ask for support and have other ways of using this technology or product or service? And then finally, engage. And it's when the customer is successful through that whole cycle, that engagement turns into advocacy, which extends your voice and reach in the market without having to spend the same time, effort, and most importantly, money that you would through traditional efforts. Let me say that again. It extends your reach without having to pay as much as you would through traditional online and offline approaches. So let's talk about the second question then. If this is why advocate marketing is important, then how does it produce authentic content? And the basic answer, it's because it comes from your customer's voice. In research that I did last year on advocate marketing creates B2B partner relationships that last a lifetime, we looked at a number of different companies and we talked to them. Some were in different stages of advocate marketing programs. Some were doing reference programs. Others were doing customer advisory boards. It's these kinds of different activities that all fit under the general umbrella of advocate marketing. And the thing that we asked is, why should we be doing this today? Why is this more important today than it has been in the past? And the answers that always seemed to come up first and that most of the people talked about was this idea of customers have credible firsthand experiences that they're willing to share, and they are sharing socially, so you may as well tap into it. And the second one being this kind of buyer's journey changing, right? The whole digital consumerism. It's no longer sales that's in charge of the conversation, it's the buyer. Now, that's not only true when you talk to marketers like yourselves, but it's true when we talk to your buyers, right? Forrester has been doing research on business buyers and on consumers for years and years and years. In fact, next to, I think, the US Census, we probably do the biggest surveys of people about their consumer buying habits and their business buying habits. So this is just a small sample of about 3,700 software decision makers at large companies, for example. And we asked the question, how do you gather information related to a purchase decision? This is just one example. And you can see that peers, right? Other people who are like me, who are doing things like me, who used your products and services like I want to, that's who I trust first. That's who I go to first when I'm looking for information. As Howard Tarnoff, and I'm going to come back to Howard in just a second, he's the Senior Vice President of Customer Success at Ceridian, the HR company. He says, social proof can't come from the company. It has to come from your customers. If all you're doing is using your Twitter and your LinkedIn and all of that stuff to promote what you're doing, well, good luck. Because really what those channels excel at is getting your customers to help tell your story. Now, what are some ways that they can do that? Again, this isn't just about social selling, because we did talk about customer references and referrals and customer conferences, advisory boards. But in talking to everyone, we kind of started to see that there are some patterns developing here, where there's really 4 major ways to produce authentic content. And I'm going to go through all these 4 with an example of each, but they are validation, education, which is really sort of focused on the market broadly, and then as you go from there to dedication and inspiration, it starts to narrow down and become much more adept at building deeper relationships. So here's examples of what kind of falls into each one of these. Let me talk about some examples. The first one comes from 2 different companies. One is Mitel, which is on my right, your left, and then the other is from Citrix. Social validation is kind of one of the easiest ways to see the impact that advocate marketing can have. Both of these companies have these social programs. There's a software platform in place, and they invite people to join the community, the hub, they sometimes call it, and they give them opportunities to do different things. Sometimes it's very simple, as in Mitel's case, they do a lot of tweeting. So they have 1,400 advocates. Now, I've talked to Liz Pedro about this. She went to Mitel and in like 2 years got this established. They have 1,400 advocates that are tweeting about them 400 to 500 times a week. Now, not all of it is, whoa, we love Mitel. A lot of this is, information, education, sharing things. And Mitel often supplies them with things that they can talk about. We're going to be at this event, that kind of thing. But what they're also doing is generating reviews from customers and partners, which helps on specific review boards to get the word out about why you do what you do and why you do it well. So, I mean, what would it take in terms of marketing resources to get that kind of reach if you were to do it on your own without your customers or partners supporting you? Think about it. The other one comes from Citrix. And the thing that I learned from talking with Lee Rubin here at Citrix is that they're talking about references mainly here. And so the reference engagement really is a great way of supporting sales enablement with marketing capability. And so again, through a similar kind of program, asking people to do different sorts of things as references, either talking to somebody on the phone, all the way up to maybe a case study, they earn points, which they can redeem for mainly in-kind sorts of contribution. In other words, they get tickets to the user conference, they may get a special executive dinner, these kinds of things. But what they found by really pulling together the data about who our references are and turning that into a program, knowing their customers, being able to link them to the right kinds of salespeople and make the right kinds of connections, is that they were able to influence, he calls it revenue engagement value. So the revenue engagement value is, in other words, if one of these deals was touched by a reference, they had over 250 million in closed-won deals that had gone through the reference process at some point. And what they could see is that it was influencing an additional 500 million in pipeline because they were able to make these kinds of connections and get existing customers to talk to prospects easier. So that's social validation. I think when it comes to education, one of my favorite examples here is from Aerohive. So Aerohive makes like room-specific or building-specific wireless capability that's mainly used in K through 12. So when all the kids have their laptops at school and they use them, this is the wireless capability that connects the teacher to them. Plus gives the teacher some tools like for taking roll and seeing who's participating and that sort of thing. They have a community that they were using to advocate about, well, why is it good to use our sort of wireless technology? And what they found is that when they asked the community to do things around education, to talk about the kinds of tools that you use, what's in your teacher's toolkit, give us some ideas about feedback. What kinds of things should we be doing differently with the product? Help us do reviews. That those were the kinds of things that were done in sort of an educational, hey, this is what I think, this is how I do it, that people were really much more interested in participating than just being a shill for Aerohive. So education is one of those kinds of content that comes out of these types of programs, but also gives you the ability to engage them in a more relevant way. The next example comes from Blackbaud, which Amy Bills is sitting right here. She actually gave this to me. I'm just so thrilled to have her in the room today. Blackbaud does software for nonprofit organizations. It helps them run their operations better. And Amy has this thing called Blackbaud Champions. It's an advocate program. But what I liked about her story is if you can kind of see what, this just describes what the program's like, is that Amy was actually in a situation where some of her customers came to her and said, hey, nobody knows what Blackbaud is about, and there's other people on the review sites. Have you been to G2 Review? Have you been to Tech Validate? We know you're on there, but we love you, and the reviews just aren't plentiful enough. She says, how about that? Okay, so maybe we can ask the community to come and help us with this. So, without kind of a lot of, we'll give you a whole lot of stuff if you do this, she just put a request out there. Hey, would you mind going on G2 Review and writing a review? In a very short period of time, something like less than 3 weeks, She had gotten so many reviews on there that their little, dot or whatever it is that G2 review had moved significantly to the right and up. That's a fabulous thing, because think of how many other people can be looking at that site and making a decision about your products and services. And then finally, Lexus Nexus. I think this is, kind of your customer advisory board example. What I like is that Lexus Nexus actually did this as kind of an expo, a series of facilitated dialogues and track sessions to bring not only customers together to talk with Lexus Nexus executives, but with each other and to share ideas. And the value is that most of the customers, in fact, all of the customers who participated, presented their own case studies. They talked about themselves with their peers, with other Lexus Nexus customers or prospects. And what was interesting is because there was this combination of customers and prospects, they saw the sales cycle for prospects there decrease from 9 to 4 months if they went through this kind of program, and that they were able to close more deals in the quarter that they held these than they had been in the whole prior 2 years. Now that's a phenomenal change in terms of the business impact that advocacy can have for your company. All right, so I hope I've convinced you that now's the time to do it, that there's real value from doing it, so how do we get started? So here's 4 ways that you can go about creating a winning advocate program. The first one is you need to shift your view of these programs from silos to strategic. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, look up here. You have like these little programs running around, and I would say for those of you that do, 90% of the time, one program doesn't know that the other one exists, or they're not being used collectively, collaboratively together. And it's time for this to stop, right? Because what I see in talking to people who've been very successful, like Amy, is that when you treat advocacy as a program, as something strategic, wonderful things start to happen. So again, we put the circle in the middle to say, and then here's all the things around it that get incorporated at each of those different stages. But it's really about how do you increase the reach to new audiences, to customers, to partners. How do you deepen the relationship? And then ultimately, how do you deepen the engagement? And then ultimately, how do you drive a relationship? And what was interesting is that when you talk about, what are the benefits that you've realized from your advocacy programs? Everybody kind of starts with, higher conversion rates. It's like the obligatory stuff, new revenue generated, which is all great. I'm not saying that's not bad. But here's where the excitement kind of builds up. It's when you start to talk about the relationship impact. Holly Soba is the vice president of marketing at a company called Signature Worldwide. So they deal a lot with the hospitality industry and training in the hospitality industry. And she said, I've had clients who I've never had a relationship with. And then we had our advocacy program, and I found out things about them. Like I have this one CIO that I know what books he's reading. And so the first thing I get on the phone and talk about is, hey, what'd you think of book XYZ? Instead of, talking about the weather or what can I do for you today. She says, it's that kind of thing in our industry where people move around from hotel chain to hotel chain, that when you create that kind of relationship, they're going to stay with you as they move from place to place to place. That's the deep kind of relationship that we're talking about here. A couple of other examples. These both come from Howard at Ceridian. The first one is he gets a call, actually it's a phone message, a text with a picture in it from this one CIO. And he says, what's up with the picture of the refrigerator? And he says, Howard, that's my mom's refrigerator. And it used to be that she had pictures of the grandkids and the stuff we brought home from school all over it. She just always pasted stuff on it. He says, now it's my article from the New York Times. Because you've helped me to become a HR professional who really is getting thought leadership and is really building his brand. So thank you. The other example's from another woman. She was a CFO at one of their clients. And Howard was noticing that she was doing a lot for them, but not redeeming any of the sort of points that they gave their advocates as a thank you for the things that they were doing. He says, hey, how come you're out there? You're swinging for the fences with us all the time, but, you're not redeeming it. And she says, Howard, I love what I'm doing. I love being a CFO at a $4,500 person company, but one day I want to be a CFO at a 45,000 person company. And you've given me the platform to be able to do that. Now, I know these are anecdotal stories, but this is the kind of relationships that happen when you move from sort of the program mentality to the relationship mentality, from the tactical to the strategic. Now, the second thing you need to be able to do is start by delivering value to the participants. Remember, back to Goodwill, it's giving them a hand up, not expecting a hand out. So you need to deliver value. In this particular example, it comes from FireEye. And what they decided to do with their community is really focus it on content that was contributed by the community, as well as content that they populated into it. So this managed defense has kind of become the de facto standard in their community for where you go for information. You can see that it's also organized by industry, so there's a lot of information in here. But this is what they used as the basis for then, like, inviting people to become advocates. You have access to this. Because this helps you, this is what we want to thank you, would you mind doing a few other things for us? The third thing to do is to make it fun. This example comes from one of my favorite companies who is doing this, called Code 42. Now, Code 42 sells endpoint management software. It's in the security space. If you lose your laptop, they can help shut the laptop off remotely and then get all the data back from it. It's an IT. It's a geeky kind of thing, right? People who we use it at Forrester because we were always writing reports, and if our laptops got lost or stolen while we're on the road, it would really hurt. And so we use this. But what they tapped into is that kind of, geek in their customer profile. So what they see is that these tech evangelists who refer them generate about half as much business from the referrals as they did on their original program. So in other words, if they spent $100,000 with Code 42 and then they referred somebody, that would be another like $45,000. So the way that they thank them and tap into them and get them to participate in this program is through things that matter to that kind of psyche. So the first thing up there is the Jerky of the Month Club. Apparently this is really popular in terms of being one of the things that people try to earn points on. The other thing is called the Loot Crate. Now the Loot Crate is like really cool things inside, but you don't know what it is until you get it. So signing up for the quarterly release of the Loot Crate is another very popular. And then of course the bottom one was during the Star Wars, the new movie that came out, The Force Awakens, they gave away Fandango tickets and then the opportunity to be in a drawing for one of the 5 BB-8 robots. Totally got the participation rate up. But I think this is what's fun, is when you make this fun, you really get to know who your customers are, and they have a good time, and you have a good time, and it's one of the best things to be able to do in marketing. And then finally, you got to show the value, but show that you appreciate. And this is from Baumgar, and it's called the 5 Days of Christmas. This was from 2014, but I know that they've continued to do this. This is a basic drawing. They're asking for things like, we'll put you in the drawing if you participate and get points for things like an iPad Air 2, Apple TV, Sony 48. I mean, this is like good stuff. But they did some really silly things. I mean, the one is, what's the worst Christmas gift you ever got? That was the challenge. Tell us about that. Create a mascot for us that reflects Baumgar plus the Christmas spirit. So just doing these kinds of things on 5 days, kind of in that dead period between Thanksgiving and Christmas, got them back in touch with a lot of their advocates, as well as spread the word. So you can see that they got 75 new members in their online community, a 15% increase, 11 new leads, and 12 new video testimonials, just by kind of goofing around. So show the value, appreciate the work. So what do you need to get started? There's a couple of key things here. First is a clear understanding of your objectives, the measures, the success criteria that you want to get. And then the next two are related in that you need to have some permission to change the status quo. Someone else, I forget who was talking, but it's like if you have to ask sales, if I can get permission to talk to the customers, you are not in a position to succeed here. You need to have some resources. It's not a lot, but it has to be enough to allow you to increase the amount of communication. I put weekly up here. It really depends on how often you communicate now. It needs to increase. And finally, the ability to match the advocate altitude with that of the advocate manager. If you want to do a lot on social reach and get a lot of people talking about you, it's great to have somebody who's energetic and who understands the technology and can be enthusiastic about this. If you're trying to do a customer advisory board, you're going to need somebody executive to be running this because you want to have the right kind of connection with that audience. Long-term advocacy requires a few things for success. The ones I want to point out, it's a commitment to keeping what's in it for the customer first. It's also realizing that once you get started, there's no going back. Because having successful, happy customers who advocate for you is the ultimate of bringing their goodwill to the front. You want to reward them, thank them, show appreciation for that, but you want to use this as a very important and careful asset. So as you think about this, think about goodwill. Think about the front to the organization and how you can take, how goodwill is really about improving the outcome for people, and in this case, your customers can be the people whose outcome you improve. But only if you put the program together in a systematic way, think about their needs first, and then have some fun with it. Understand who they are, make it fun for them, and advocacy will start to build on itself out in the marketplace. With that, I know I'm a little bit over. I got a couple reports out there on Forrester, if you want to take a look at those. I'm also speaking about this at our marketing forum. Sorry for the little commercial there. But with that, Andrew, I'll let you know what I need to do. All right, thank you.
Awesome job, thank you.